On today's conversation, we shall be speaking to the Executive Director at UNAIDS, who will be giving us her take regarding the recently waived IP rights for the COVID-19 vaccines. And is it possible to reverse the already existing inequality gaps brought about by the various lockdowns and curfews and economic shutdowns over the last 14 months? She will also give us her opinion on the HIV prevalence in many parts of Africa and the latest sex offense bill in Uganda. Now, to be part of this conversation, tweet us at CNBC Africa or tag me directly at The Real Quizzitor.
The coronavirus hasn't been an equal opportunity virus. It has widened already existing inequalities. Let me give you an example. Today, the rich countries are vaccinating one person per second, and UK and US have almost finished vaccinating the first vaccine to their adult population. Meanwhile, here in Africa, we haven't even yet achieved 0.1% vaccination. That's how unequal the vaccination is. But even also in terms of impacts of this coronavirus, the world's workers have lost $3.7 trillion in lost earnings, workers of the world. Meanwhile, the world's billionaires have gained $3.9 trillion in increased wealth. So some people are really gaining while the majority are losing. If you think about the three top vaccine producers, Pfizer, Johnson & Johnson, and AstraZeneca, they've been paying out to their shareholders $26 billion in dividends and stock buybacks last year. So that's even enough money to pay to vaccinate the whole of Africa. So we're seeing a situation where the virus is moving faster now into the developing countries. We're seeing devastation in India and Brazil. At the same time, these are the countries, the developing countries are the ones with less capacity to cope and without the financing to manage this crisis. So it's in every way an inequality crisis where those who can are saving themselves right now, and those who can't are being hit hard and are stuck at the bottom, stuck in the back of a queue where the scarcity of the vaccine is artificial. It could be different. That's why we salute very much the leadership of President Biden and the United States to come boldly. This is a global leadership we've been asking for, to suspend the waiver, or rather to give a waiver on the TRIPS rules, so intellectual property rules, so that the technology can be shared, the know-how can be shared, and manufacturing can be scaled up on every continent, and we get out of this crisis together. No one is safe until everyone is safe. This is one of those situations where the more we delay, the more the world economy sinks, and the more new variants come up that will make those who are vaccinated still vulnerable to the new variants. So in this situation, no one is getting out of this until we all get out of it.
Madam Winnie, you've been very vocal regarding your views around that. You've been echoed by former British Prime Minister Gordon Brown, Senator Warren as well. Have we failed, and by we I mean the world, has this been a moral failure?
It is not just a moral failure, it's a human rights failure, it's a social failure, it's an economic failure. It does not make moral sense, human rights sense, or economic sense. As I've told you, actually the International Chamber of Commerce estimated that these delays to vaccinate the developing countries are going to cost the global economy more than $9 trillion. Half of that will be a cost to the rich countries. So that tells you that there's no economic sense in this. Even rich countries are losing by delaying. So it doesn't make economic sense. It's absolutely inhuman to sit there with the technology and put your profits first before lives. Africa is not short of the vaccine now because, yeah, we don't have enough money. But even with the money we have, we cannot buy because the rules allow a few owners of technology to hoard their technology and deny everybody the recipes for making new. That's totally inhuman. So it doesn't make you sense that profits for some, huge profits, super profits, come before people's lives. You might ask that, but shouldn't they make a profit over their innovation? Of course they can. And there are many ways to reward innovation. For example, you can have innovation prizes where you get a huge prize for your innovation, but then the technology moves on for mass production for everyone's life to be saved. There is also the important need to de-link research and development from the cost of medicines. Why? Because research and development is often invested in hugely by taxpayers' money. And the companies, the pharma, pretend that it is their investment, but it isn't. Today, we know that Moderna, for example, the vaccine, is fully funded by the United States taxpayers. Only one person put in $1 million, a singer called Dolly Parton. She's the only private money in this vaccine.
And that's a very interesting point you make there, Madam Winnie. The profits over humanity nature, which is, largely a capitalist belief. But when you're on the other side of the aisle, where you are at the moment, or where majority of the people in Africa are at the moment, where we're speaking about, equity and equality when it comes to these issues, you're labeled Marxist, communist, right? And these are labels that have gotten negative connotations. But this grid, how do we revise the grid?
No, we are just talking common sense. First of all, we are saying that it can't be right that a handful of pharmaceutical companies decide for the world how much vaccines will be produced, what price for the vaccine, and who will be able to buy and be vaccinated. These are important decisions that should be made by governments. That's why we elect them. That's not Marxism. That is pure common sense about how the world is run. It wasn't until a few years ago that medicines became a business where, or the innovation of health technologies became a business where those in business can determine who lives and who dies. It has always been the role of governments with a strong hand into research and development, into regulation of these monopolies, that they have played a role in ensuring that everybody has their right to health. I don't believe that this is socialism or capitalism. This is human rights, and this is about fairness and justice.
Now, I want us to go back to that decision that was made, by the United States, that was echoed by President Joe Biden. It has come at a time, and if, for some who have been following, when the United States is having a lot of vaccines that are almost getting expired, which they want to export. Just put a figure to it, about 5 million of vaccines. One would argue that maybe this has come a little too late, and it could have reversed a bigger catastrophe.
No, not at all. You see, it's true. We are seeing horrific scenes in Brazil, in India, in some countries where there's a surge of this virus, and we need to act quickly to save lives. So we cannot say that it is too late. The G7 are about to meet, and what President Biden has done is to show strong leadership by backing more than 100 countries, led by South Africa and India, who are asking for a TRIPS waiver. This is a temporary suspension of intellectual property rules so that they can safely also manufacture this vaccine without being dragged to court for breaking trade rules. This is important for the other G7 countries particularly those who are most resistant, who have companies that have the technology, to also agree and lift the trade intellectual property rules temporarily. And secondly, share the technology and the know-how so that we move fast. There's mass production of the vaccine and we all get out. As I have said, with this virus, no one, it is not going to be over for anyone until it is over for everyone. This is the sense that they must see. This is not about socialism or Marxism. It's about saving everybody.
Madam Winnie, you also mentioned a very strong point, which is research and development and how much has been invested in that. I would like to argue, over the past 2 decades, Africa as a continent has invested less than 1% of its GDP in R&D. A country just like Israel alone has invested more than 14%. Singapore, South Korea on an average of 5 to 7% over that same period of time. And these lessons for leadership on the continent when it comes to the importance of one, making bold decisions, two, investing in R&D.
Indeed, there are many lessons for Africa to learn through this crisis. But one thing I must first say is that Africans, there are so many capable Africans who are part of these innovations that are saving the world today, are saving lives today. Africans have a lot of scientific capability across all countries. It's true the investment has been low, and today we are learning that our very lives, our security depends on ourselves, that actually you can see other parts of the world getting ahead and saving their lives while we die, and that therefore we must invest in manufacturing, our own medicines, being able to produce our own health technologies. And we've done some good things. African leaders have united the market. We have the Africa Free Continental Trade Area. Now is the first test of that common market to see that a number of countries pull together and enable investors, African investors particularly, to invest in the capacity to make vaccines and medicines that can have a wide benefit from the wide market of Africa. Definitely that lesson is being learned. We are working closely, we as UNAIDS, with the Center for Disease Control, Africa Center for Disease Control. We've been participating in meetings where African leaders are talking exactly about that. How do we build up our vaccine capacity? There is a polio manufacturing plant in Senegal. South Africa manufactures medicines and vaccines. How do we ramp them up so that they produce the vaccine for COVID-19, but also build them up to produce more, plus other countries, Kenya, Morocco, they've got basic capacity that can be ramped up if the market is availed for the whole region.
Madam Winnie, we're about to run out of time, but I want us to talk about HIV, a disease that has ravaged our continent. You've been on a tour in some of the African countries, Namibia to name but a few, and we've seen a rise in infections in countries like Namibia, Mozambique. The situation is dire there. Are we doing enough?
Yes, the Eastern Southern African region actually is the region that has fought hardest and reduced new infections and reduced deaths most dramatically in the last 10 years. But we were also coming from the worst situation. We are the region with the highest burden, but we have also made the biggest achievements. That means we still have a long way to go. For example, we know that South Africa is the country with the highest burden in the world. We still have about 1 million people who are out there positive but not on treatment. We got to find them. We know, for example, that in Mozambique, a similar situation is there, but those who come on treatment then fall out of treatment and become vulnerable to diseases and deaths. So, and we also know that adolescent girls and young women are the most at risk, often 3 or 4 times more at risk than boys and men of the same age. We must tackle the inequalities that make certain groups of people more vulnerable, particularly young girls, adolescent girls and young women. And the solutions lie in big things like rolling out secondary education that's free for all children, that can reduce the vulnerability of girls by 50%. Just staying in a safe space of school, even if the school is not good quality, but if there's no sexual violence in the school and the girl is safe, you reduce her vulnerability by keeping her there. So things like rolling out universal secondary education have benefits for fighting HIV amongst girls, but also reducing teenage pregnancies, reducing early marriage, empowering girls and boys to be part of the global economy. There are many benefits there. So we're now talking about tackling the barriers that remain, the inequalities that make some groups vulnerable.
Could we say the lockdowns, curfews, over the past 12 to 14 months could have taken that fight a few steps back? And how do we get it back on track?
Absolutely. The COVID pandemic has indeed pushed us back, but we were already not doing well globally. We were not achieving the targets for 2020, and now we are pushed further back. For example, we know that more than 20 million girls were out of school because of this. About 20 million girls may not return to school after the pandemic for various reasons, cost of fees, pregnancy, and so on. That already tells us that quite a number of them have contracted HIV, because getting pregnant at the age of 14, that's unsafe sex. So the possibility of being affected is high there. We also know that services were drawn upon. This is a positive thing on the one hand, that the HIV scientists, technicians, the laboratories, the community services were drawn upon to fight COVID. In the first phase, we saw services for HIV being pushed back. We saw fewer people coming for testing and coming for prevention and treatment, but we fought hard. We innovated, communities innovated, and we started seeing the services coming back again. But it is a fight to help governments with stretched health systems. Remember, health was already being cut in many countries as debt was mounting. In that context, to help them to keep many balls in the air, COVID, HIV, malaria, TB, it's tough, but we are there finding solutions to pushing forward and helping governments find the fiscal space, strengthen their systems, and fight on both fronts.
Thank you, Madam Winnie. I just want to talk about a development that happened in East Africa as of this week, and that was around the LGBTQI people. And just to be more specific, what was termed as the sexual offences bill. Now, for many, this felt like a backdoor, this clause in the bill, because in 2013, this was discredited by the parliament. Now, that bill that was passed, it contains a clause, and allow me to read this clause. The clause criminalizes same-sex relationships and prescribes a 5-year jail term for anyone guilty of same-sex acts. My question here would be that, almost 60 years plus since independence, quote unquote, in Africa, why do we still have discussions around equity and equality when it comes to these and these laws?
Let me say first that the sexual offences bill in Uganda has some positives, quite a number of positives. For example, it creates an offense of sexually exploiting migrant workers. It reduces, it also makes a crime out of sexually exploiting prisoners. It does also criminalize sexual harassment. So first, let me say that the bill itself has quite a number of positives. However, when it comes to same-sex relations, when it comes to sex workers, we find that this law is going against the trend globally, which is to give human rights, particularly health rights, to LGBTI people, sexual minorities. The fact that it is criminalizing them, making it explicit. Remember, we have a penal code in Uganda that criminalizes what it calls sex, which is against the natural order. That is how it describes same-sex relations. But now this law explicitly describes people who are gay or lesbian or bisexual as criminal. This is dangerous because all these people who are sexual minorities will find it hard to come forward to seek treatment. And if they are HIV infected, they will continue to spread it and we will never end HIV. Our aim is to give them equal rights as citizens, human rights, right to health, so that we can all live healthy lives. We don't need to be judging them morally. There are churches and mosques and places like that that speak for God. For governments, it is to deliver service to everybody. So it's unfortunate that the law further criminalizes LGBTI people. It also has a provision where it increases sanctions for increased sanctions for rape by someone who's HIV positive. Again, that one, all the evidence is that it does not actually have any effect at all, because a rapist is already a criminal. And to say we will increase your sentence because you're also HIV positive seems to suggest you're punishing them for carrying a virus in their body. That's wrong. And in fact, it doesn't produce any results. Our evidence is there. So yes, the law has further criminalized LGBTI, sexual minorities, who were already criminalized by the penal code anyway, but it's more explicit and therefore more dangerous. It also has, it punishes those who buy sex. But you see, even that, the evidence is that when you criminalize sex work, the person who suffers is actually the sex worker, mostly women, and mostly poor women. They become the victims, usually, of police, law and order enforcers, and also other pimps who come and claim to give them safety, but turn them into actually trafficking them, make them slaves. So actually criminalizing sex work, we know from evidence, just punishes, drives women underground, poor women underground, undermines their health and undermines their human rights. It is best to leave such moral issues to be, let the moral leaders deal with them, but let us give health and human rights to everybody.
And just before we let you go let's put a timeline to this. How soon do you think we can achieve equity and equality for the LGBTQI people globally?
It will come. It will come through the power of people. They are organizing, and wherever they have organized, they have won rights. They have won rights in many countries, both in the developed and developing world. Only recently, Gabon repealed its law similar to ours, which is anti-homosexuality. They repealed it. Botswana repealed it. South Africa doesn't have such a law. So step by step, it is through organizing. And my wish is that human rights organizations, women's rights organizations, or look at their issues also from the lens of sexual orientation and sexual identity, and speak for the rights and build a movement around LGBT people who are also fighting for their rights. I know that we have many traditionalists who are from the Christian, the Islamic, and other faith who see this as religiously wrong. Fine, but we have to live and let be. If others don't see it that way, and they are not coming to sleep in your bed, and they are not raping your child, but they are consenting, having sex by consent in their room, why should we ask our policemen to go lifting the blankets of people to find out what's going on there? It's just wrong. So I would appeal to people who have strong views at homosexuality. There are even others who are not punished for same sex, who are punished for being transgender. I mean, I've often seen someone who looks like a man but speaks like a woman, or looks like a woman and dresses like a man, being harassed on the street, being treated like they've done something wrong. That's how they are born. You see, people find it hard to see that sex is on a spectrum, that our sexuality is on a spectrum, but some people are born neither male nor female, and we must let them be. So tolerance in society is important, and it will grow as people organize and struggle for their rights to be accepted as who they are. We must understand that people are born in a particular way, and we must be not frightened of them, but let them be.
Thank you, Mrs. Winnie Byanyima. That was the UNAIDS Executive Director, Winnie Byanyima, speaking to us in today's special edition of Captains of Industry. Now, if you want to be part of this conversation, tweet us at CNBC Africa or have any ideas, you could also tag me at The Real Quizera.